In many ways, the work of a critic is easy.
Hey everyone, Fresh Orange here.
We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read.
Wow! This album's bad. It's really bad.
But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating it so.
No. Nope. No.
I will debate you!
Not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere. I will be returning to Gusto soon, hungry for more.
He's angrily ordering a croissant or eating some Asian pussy with sweet and sour sauce. I'm feeling a 0 on this
monologue.
A big, fat goose egg. Transition.
In 2007, Anthony Fantano started The Needle Drop, a podcast at Connecticut Public Radio in which he would talk about music. His channel with the same name would be launched in January of 2009. The first video review Fantano would ever make would be on a Jay Reatard record, a historical relic that has since been removed from the channel. As his following grew, so did Fantano's expectations that he could keep going. By the end of 2010, he had accumulated 10,000 subscribers, and today he is close to the 2.5 million mark. At the moment, the first actual album review currently available on his channel is the Gorillaz Plastic Beach review. And what is interesting to notice is that after more than 10 years, his format remains essentially the exact same. Production quality, editing and such have definitely improved, but the elements are all already there. The grading system, the way he talks about the albums, the music elements which he focuses on, even the vocabulary he uses. It is extremely rare in the history of YouTube and internet history in general for a content creator to be so consistent with a specific format, and to not only maintain their success but to also have it grow over the years. Fantano finds himself in a category of his own in the YouTuber universe. He doesn't even include the music he reviews in his videos because of copyright, meaning that the sole content he presents is his opinion. Other successful music YouTubers aren't really comparable since what they actually do is quite different. Taught in the Shadows makes cultural analysis of songs and artists, focusing more on the contextual aspects of those songs and artists. Adam Neely talks about the technical stuff. Half of the time, I can barely understand what the guy is saying.
Image as represented by a cat. I believe it is called a fursona.
And AJ, who is probably the closest to Fantano in the review category, is not only taking a break from YouTube, but also has a very different format, recording her live reactions to albums and focusing on how the music makes her feel in the moment.
And if they don't like it, they can suck a motherfucking dick, bitch.
Fantano has had essentially the same writing structure in almost all of his reviews. First, he gives a brief introduction about the artist or band and their career as of the moment of the review. Then he goes track by track, pointing out in a very eloquent way his likes and dislikes about the production, instrumentation, vocals, and so on. As he goes through each song, he also makes sure to comment on how each piece contributes to the general theme, message, or feel of the record, making the work in its entirety more or less cohesive. By the end, he gives the album a score, which ranges from not good to 10.
I'm feeling a 10 on this record.
Yeah!
And that score gets people fucking crazy. Fantano has reached a point in his career that is basically unreached by any other critic, in that even some A-list artists care about his review. Not only that, his reviews and particularly his score numbers become talking points for a big part of music nerds on the internet whenever a new big album comes out. It has not only reached meme status, but also become kind of a virtual rite of passage for these big projects' releases. And disagreeing with these scores, sometimes in an aggressive and passionate way, actually became part of it. Some of Fantano's most controversial reviews include Saba's Care for Me, Mac Miller's Swimming, Toru Imoa's Anything in Return, Kanye's My Twisted Dark Fantasy, and many, many more. Fantano himself says that the score is based solely on his personal feelings on the records, but the kind of uproar that occurs over his reviews show how seriously people take his opinion. I myself am confident in the fact that Fantano hates women and gay people when he gave Fetch the Bolt Cutters a light 7, when it was, at the very least, a strong 8. The question that arises isn't even how Anthony Fantano became so successful. The answer to that is actually pretty simple. He's very thorough with his reviews. He works a lot covering mainstream and underground material, and most importantly, the guy knows his shit. He very clearly loves music and isn't shy of holding controversial opinions. The more interesting question pertains to the actual nature of music criticism and criticism in general. There are multiple studies regarding the brain science as to why we find some kinds of music more appealing, and technically speaking, why we find some chords or chord progressions more pleasing than others. However, that's not what music criticism is about. Multiple songs could have similar and even identical notes and chord progressions, as they do, but it doesn't mean they are equally good. It is about their artistic value, the message they convey, how they make us feel. All of that is judged based not only on the song in itself, but even more so on individual, regional, and cultural biases. Music criticism, much like any criticism of any art form, is subjective by its very nature. Finding a song like Nickelback's Photograph bad, for example, can end up saying more about you than the song itself.
Look at this graph.
One can affirm that the song is tacky, uninspiring, cringy, and while all of that can be traced to some sort of objectivity, knowing how the song has culturally impacted our generation, it is still a subjective judgment, even if it's shared by everyone on the planet. And when it comes to descriptors of production, instrumentation, and vocals, all of that is also very much contextual. Mount Erie's A Crow Looked at Me is, in my opinion, one of the best albums of the last decade. It is a love letter to the artist's late wife and a contemplation of his grief and his relationship with his child. It is raw, emotional, and heart-wrenching. It is also a minimalistic project. Phil Elverum sings out of tune at times, the rhythm is inconsistent, and the instrumentation is stripped down and dry. Some lyrics feel more like a conversation and more specifically a lament that make up for the lack of subtlety with raw honesty and emotion. And while all of that for me and a ton of people actually betters the experience of the album, that might not be true for everyone, especially someone who doesn't consume music the same way that I do. My mother in particular said that it was too much of a downer. Music criticism isn't about having the right opinion, but about convincing other people that your opinion is fair. Alan Walker, author of An Anatomy of Musical Criticism, says, "The crucial question facing every critic is how to demonstrate the truth of his reaction. Yet all critics cannot be right. Many are diametrically opposed to one another. Plainly, criticism remains indistinguishable from mere speculation until the critic develops the means of confirming the truth of his views. Criticism is the rationalization of intuitive musical understanding. In this context, the critic with the most convincing and seemingly reasonable argument is the one who rises among the others. In a way, the critic simply holds an opinion that other people respect, most of the time. However, it's not that simple. Fantano might say his scores are based solely on his personal feelings, but it's just not that easy to affirm that and move on with your day, disregarding the fact that a melon from the internet gave one of your favorite albums a decent 3. Not only that, there also remains the fact that even in the midst of subjective reasoning, there is still some consensus on which songs are good and which are bad. And subjective reasoning isn't enough to justify that. If the practice of criticism, as has been noted, can be reduced to one thing, expressing value judgment, the theory of criticism is essentially one thing too, explaining them. It is not enough for critics to assert that one work is a masterpiece, another a mediocrity. An attempt must be made to explain why, and this may lead to a central discovery. A masterpiece is not a matter of chance, nor is a mediocrity. Both are symptomatic of deep, far-reaching principles. Now, the very concept of a masterpiece is extremely dubious, but this statement remains true. There must be a reason or multiple reasons why some songs and artists become unanimously celebrated throughout history, sometimes regardless of critical acclaim. The reason might be technical, socio-economical, historical, cultural, or most likely all of the above. There is also the matter of the music industry and who is in control of it at any given time. Historically, in the West, that has been rich white people, surprisingly enough. Although music by marginalized people has been the center of multiple cultural movements throughout the last few centuries, at the end of the day, it has also been distributed and marketed as a product. And those who control production, whether they be record labels, radio stations, or Spotify, are also, in theory, those who dictate its quality. Critics could very well play the role of enforcers of the status quo, kind of pushing down anything that tries something new and groundbreaking. Fantano himself has been accused of that multiple times. A quote good critic would just be the one who most people agree with, while a quote bad critic is simply someone whose opinion we dismiss. This is, of course, kind of a no-end discussion since it is based, again, in not a lot more than subjective judgment. Whichever conclusion we arrive at, the fact remains that music, like many artistic expressions, is the processing of our feelings in the face of reality, and criticism of it, whether we like it or not, is a part of that process. Unfortunately, it is difficult to show that a value judgment can stand for anything that is even remotely true about music, as opposed to standing for something that is merely a personal whim on the part of the critic, since there is no such thing as an organized body of knowledge called musical criticism. The entire history of musical criticism can be summed up as a struggle to forge itself into a suitable tool for coming to grips with the art of music. What scholars do fail to consider when analyzing the performance of music criticism, however, is that talking about music is just fucking fun. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone can critique, which does not mean that anyone will become a great critic. Not everyone can become a great critic, but a great critic can come from anywhere, even Connecticut. Thank you for watching this video. I have a Patreon like any other bitch in this platform. So I would appreciate it if you could help me get my start or whatever. Anyway, thanks.